we dedicate this field. Boy, I've been waiting a long time to say this. We dedicate this field to the honor of God by naming it after one of his valiant Christian soldiers. Chief Justice Roy Moore and guests, welcome to Chief Justice Roy S. Moore Field.
Here, here. Well, needless to say, I've never had a monument or a field named after me. And it's a deep honor that I'm here today, and I want to thank Michael Peroutka and his brother Steve and his father. Mr. Peroutka, you don't know how special it is to stand on a field here named Gladway Farms. You know, I believe there's no accidents. God works things out that we don't see. When I came up and I was told I was going to Gladway Farms, I thought they had named it because of the Ten Commandments. You see, that's what the Ten Commandments stand for. That's why the reason God gave us these divine laws. I'm looking at a portion of Blackstone's commentaries here, which are cited on the monument, that talk about the connection between justice and felicity. That's justice and happiness. And he said that he had not perplexed the rules of the laws of nature with many rules, as some have vainly surmised, referring to the fitness and unfitness of things, but had reduced those rules to one paternal precept, that man should pursue his own happiness. For he is so intimately connected, so inseparably interwoven, the laws of eternal justice with the happiness of each individual, that the latter cannot be attained but by observing the former, and if the former be punctually obeyed, it cannot help but induce the latter. Now, if anybody understands that here, they're a better man or woman than I am. But it simply means you can't be happy unless you follow God's law, and if you follow God's law, you can't help but be happy. Hence, the name Gladway Farms is altogether fitting and proper for this installment of this monument. You know, when we put as I said back at the cake cutting ceremony, we put the inscriptions around the monument. It was to remind judges of the basis of our laws. George Washington, and I'm looking at the back of the monument, said, let it simply be asked, where is the security for property, for reputation, for life, if the sense of religious obligation desert the oaths, which are the instruments of investigation in our courts of justice? So help me God. They required judges under the Judiciary Act of 1789 to end their oath of office with so help me God. But today, judges and legislators, the exception of present here, Don Dwyer and others, often attempt to remove God from anything with law or government. It is against the law. It is against our country. It's against our founding documents. These laws make us one people. These laws are for our virtue and our morality, our behavior one to the other, and our duties which we owe to God. It is for religious freedom that this monument stands. That government can't tell us how to perform these duties and how to worship this God. And if we forget this God, government starts telling us what to believe and what to think and how we can act. And when that happens, it's tyranny. And we have lost our liberty and our freedom. And when we forget this, there are serious consequences. But fortunately, I see on this farm and in Michael Peroutka and his Institute on the Constitution, in the preaching of the preachers that I've talked to in the last few days, a revival of spirit in America. And I think people are starting to wake up. And you young people that are here, you'll remember this day someday. And you'll think back, and hopefully you'll be living in America that is repented at the throne of God for its sins and turned back to his holy laws, which govern our behavior. On the front is one statement by George Mason in 1772. The laws of nature are the laws of God, whose authority can be superseded by no power on earth. That's what this country is based upon. When they say we must divorce God from our law, that we're divorcing God from our country. And when we do that, when we stop saying in God we trust, and so help me God, and one nation under God, then we will suffer the consequences. God may take his hand from us. If I may be permitted, I wrote a poem about the Declaration that talked about the laws of nature and of nature's God, and it's not very long. I did it last night, and maybe some of you weren't there last night. It was called One Nation Under God Was Their Cry, indeed their declaration. For upon the laws of nature and of nature's God they built a mighty nation. But unlike mankind before them, who had walked this earth and sod, these men would never question the sovereignty of God. That all men were created was a truth self-evident, and to secure the rights God gave us was the role of government. And should any form of government become destructive of this end, it was their right, indeed their duty, a new one to begin. So with a firm reliance on divine providence for protection, they pledged their sacred honor, and they sought his wise direction. They even lifted up an appeal to God for all the world to see, and vowed their independence forever to be free. But I'm glad they're not here with us today to see the mess that we're in, how we've given up our righteousness for a life of indulgent sin. For when abortion is no longer called murder, and when sodomy is deemed a right, then good is now called evil, and darkness is now called light. And no longer does man see a need for God when he's in full control. For the only truth, self-evident, is in the latest poll. And while the truth of God was founded on the law of all creation, man now through law denies the truth and calls it separation. And no longer does man see a need for God. And that's where we are in this country today. We don't see the need for God, for we think we're in control, when the only thing we listen to in our legislatures and our laws is the latest poll. But with man as his own master, we fail to count the cost. Our precious freedoms vanish, and our liberties are lost. Our children are told they can't pray in school, and they teach them evolution. Why can't they see the fear of God is the only true solution? Our schools have become the battleground, while all across the land Christians just shrug their shoulders, afraid to take a stand. And from the grave you can hear their voices cry, the victory has already been won. Just glorify the Father as did his only Son. And when your work on this earth is done and you've traveled where we've trod, you'll leave the land we left to you, one nation under God. You know, as I was reciting that, I was thinking of a Mr. Peroutka that I didn't know, or you didn't know, that had such a farm here in Maryland many years ago called Gladway Farms. And I think he would agree and be honored at the dedication of a new farm and the dedication of this monument on that farm, on Gladway Farm. Because it is the glad way that we should pursue, and it is the laws upon which this country is based. I'm honored to be here with people like Herb Titus, Tom Parker, Ben Dupre, and others that helped me, as well as Michael Peroutka, through this battle on the Ten Commandments. It's not over. It's only just begun. And now others are asked to come forward and take a stand. And they have a place that they can see what it was about and what it will be in the future. We've got to fight for the right to preserve the acknowledgement of the sovereignty of God in this country. That's what it's all about. I appreciate you coming here today, and thank you, Michael Peroutka. You deeply honored me. Thank you.